In all my years of making tier lists on YouTube, I don't know if I've ever been presented with a challenge quite like this. The tier list at this point is as fluid as it could be. The NFL has as much parity as it could have. And usually, in the spirit of my tier list, the Super Bowl favorites stay the Super Bowl favorites through a lot of the season because they've earned that title. But at this point in the season, these guys are switching positions left and right. And I know it's not in the spirit of what I normally do, but I'm going off of gut feeling week to week at this point, and we'll see if anything sticks. Let's talk week 7 NFL tier list. As always, we will continue to start with the 2026 mock draft season, and that starts with the New York Jets, who are still the only team in the NFL without a win. Justin Fields once again proved, this time overseas, that he cannot command an offense as the New York Jets net -10 passing yards versus the Denver Broncos. That's a real stat when you factor in all the sacks that we're taking. Every time they drop back to pass, total on the day, they actually lost 10 yards. That tells you all you got to know about the New York Jets. The Miami Dolphins, I also have in this tier. Tua and Mike McDaniel might be the funniest combination ever of a head coach and quarterback. When we look back on that, did you guys see Tua's comments about the leadership and how there's a lack of leadership in the players' meetings? Like, bro, you're the quarterback. You're the highest paid player on the team. You're the lack of leadership, Tua. Like, it is an absolute dumpster fire over there. Cleveland Browns still in this tier. Dylan Gabriel was asked to throw the ball 52 times versus Pittsburgh. The Browns are never going to win a game that way. I think Dylan Gabriel could be an okay game manager at some point in his NFL career. I don't know if the Browns are the organization to build that with. I do like some of the Browns pieces, but you know, they have a strong defense. I think they'll have a real run game, but we've seen the Browns have that before and do nothing. So ultimately, I guess it's a wait and see, and hopefully things are better coming in 2026 for Browns fans. The Tennessee Titans finally pulled the trigger, fired Brian Callahan, so step in the right direction there. You have Cam Ward, who I think is the franchise quarterback. The rest of the roster, not very good. Not very good, and I don't expect a big turnaround just because Callahan was fired for Tennessee, but again, a step in the right direction from this organization. I still got the Raiders in this tier. They just beat the Titans. I guess they're the better of two dog water teams, but at the end of the day, dog water is dog water. Geno Smith is not that guy. The Raiders are just simply put not a good football team. Cincinnati, still living in this tier. Joe Flacco, I think, actually makes them fun and interesting. He doesn't turn the ball over at the rate that Jake Browning does. So the Bengals with their weapons, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, should be at least a little bit alive in fourth quarters of games like we saw versus the Packers. Do I expect them to win many of those games? I do not. But at least they're alive, and for fantasy purposes, it got better. The New Orleans Saints, again, probably in this tier, one of the more competitive teams week to week. I know their record is just as bad as anybody's in here, not named the New York Jets, but Rattler, kind of decent week to week. Kellen Moore, a guy I believe in. I wonder if they're going to be sellers at the deadline, though, and we're going to see this team really bottom out for just a top tier pick and let Kellen Moore really start to shape and build his offense in drafting guys in his image for the team. And I still got Carolina in this tier. I know they're 3-3. You could make the case that I can move them up to Frisky. I'm not buying into it. And to be true to myself and true to the tier list, I'm leaving Carolina here. I understand that their record probably dictates that they should be moved up to the Frisky tier, but on the eye test, I think that they've been able to move the ball in the second halves against two of the bottom 4 defenses in football, and I need to see a little bit more for me to be bought in. We move to the Frisky tier, and that's going to start off with the Baltimore Ravens, man. The Ravens are 1-5. They have the bye week here at the perfect time. I still have them in the Frisky tier because I do think that there's still, as small of a chance as it is, a very small chance that Lamar Jackson returns to this team. They go on a fantastic run, and they somehow win their division and are in the playoffs. I think that's the only path. I would be shocked if them and Pittsburgh could both make the playoffs with the way that the AFC playoff picture is kind of shaping out right now. It feels like Baltimore will have to come back and win the division. They do have 2 games versus Pittsburgh. The schedule kind of lightens up a little bit, so it's a sliver of an opportunity out of respect for Lamar Jackson, but this team is hanging on by a thread at this point in time. Minnesota was in this tier last week. They had a bye week. Nothing's really going to change for them. I'll be interested to see if J.J. McCarthy's the quarterback this upcoming week against Philly, or if it is once again Carson Wentz. But something to take note of. I'm moving the Giants up to this tier. I think that the Giants, similar to another team that we're going to talk about in this tier, are kind of a roller coaster the rest of the season. There's going to be some really high highs, like that Thursday night game that we saw versus Philly, where Dart and Scatabo and that offense looks like it's really, really humming. Brian Daboll's found his guy, and you see the best of those two. And then I think there's also going to be games like versus New Orleans, where the worst of rookies comes out with the turnovers and the not smart plays. And I think we're going to just kind of be up and down for that. But for the Giants, I do think that they could seriously be competitive with anybody on any given Sunday, and they could also lose to anybody on any given Sunday. And to me, that's the definition of a frisky team. And the team that I mentioned that it feels like is the Arizona Cardinals. The Colts are one of the better teams in football, and with Jacoby Brissett, they went out there and competed. Again, the Cardinals will have some of the worst loss that you've ever seen, like to Brian Callahan and the Tennessee Titans, and then they'll go out there and give the Colts a run for their money. They're never consistent enough to be a real good team, but I don't think they're ever bad enough to have a top 5 pick in the draft at this current state. You know, unless they try to kind of bottom out and tank, they're just going to be better than a lot of these teams down here on the course of the season. And then I got Dallas in this tier. I'm moving Dallas down. You lose to the Panthers, you got to move down a tier. Offensively, though, they could go into a shootout with any team. We saw it with Green Bay. They had a 40-40 tie because Dak and Schottenheimer in that offense were humming. When CeeDee Lamb gets back, they could be on the fringe of a top 5 offense in football, but it's a bottom 5 defense in football. It's going to create some really fun games that the Cowboys are in as long as Dak is healthy, and they're going to be an entertaining TV product, but at the end of the day, at best, they're frisky. My fringe playoff tier, the Houston Texans, man, they were in this tier last week. They had a bye week. Nothing changes. They still have a top 5 defense in football. The offense, seemingly the last 2 weeks, started getting going, started humming a little bit. Now, it was against the Titans and the Ravens, so I'm excited to see this upcoming week on Monday Night Football against a Seattle team that, despite their injuries at corner, has been still pretty solid defensively. What Houston can look like on some extra rest. I moved the Jags down to this tier. I know they got that win over Kansas City. I thought Kansas City in the game outplayed them, and then their performance versus Seattle this week kind of showed me, yeah, the Jaguars are still who I think that they are. They just have a good record right now because they have forced a hell of amount of turnovers, but as much as they're 4-2, they could probably just as easily be 2-4 at this point in the season. I think them and Houston will be competing potentially for a second playoff spot, and it should be an interesting race as we head down the wire. Absolutely. I got Atlanta up in this tier. I think Atlanta has some really high peaks. Like we just saw them beat Buffalo. Bijan Robinson has an argument to be the best running back in football with what he's doing right now. He's just so solid for them. Some of their offense does have some predictability to it to me. It feels like they run every single play out of the pistol, and 80% of them feel like halfback stretches, whether it's to Algier or Bijan Robinson. But if it ain't broke, right, because they are moving the ball that way. Penix, he has ups and downs. Drake London, one of the more underrated receivers in football, did a real number on Buffalo last night. And the Falcons have a real defensive line, man. They're fringe playoffs because the NFC's loaded, but week to week, man, the Falcons are a really, really tough opponent to play as long as they don't beat themselves. I got the Chicago Bears in this tier. The Bears won back-to-back games by a score of 25-24. I don't know if that's ever happened in NFL history. Similar to the Falcons, you see these really high highs. Caleb Williams, he could really throw the football sometimes. Roma Dunze, really solid. DeAndre Swift had a really big game. DJ Moore injury, a little bit concerning. Luther Burden starting to play well, and a defense that does force takeaways. I don't know if they are going to be consistent enough this season to get into the playoffs, but again, week to week, competing matchup to matchup, I think the Bears can have a competitive game with just about any team in the NFL. And I moved the Niners down to this tier. I know they're 4-2 and their schedule isn't that tough. It's probably good enough to get them into the playoffs, but holy injuries, man. The entire team's going to be on IR soon at this point. Fred Warner, Bosa, both out for the year on the defense. I don't know how they can defensively recover from that and stay afloat. The Mac Jones thing is kind of taking its course. Like, they do miss Brock Purdy at a certain point. We'll see how the offense looks when it gets out there. I'm not going to drop them to frisky at this point in time with their record and with their schedule, but this is a team that feels like even if they make the playoffs, they're probably not going to win a playoff game. We got our playoff teams now. The Los Angeles Chargers are in this tier. I think Justin Herbert is good enough to lead this squad there. Jesse Minter does have a really solid defense. We'll see when Omarion Hampton gets back. They miss Quentin Johnson this week. And I think at the Chargers' current construction, with the injuries to the offensive line, some of which Joe Alt will be back, Rashawn Slater will not, a lack of a run game, week to week, I don't think they're going to be capable of blowing anybody out, but I trust Justin Herbert to do what he did in this game. Make a couple of big plays at the end of the game, show his high-end elite talent, and get them in spots to win. They're 4-2. I think that they'll win enough games the rest of the season to be a playoff team, but it feels kind of lateral to last year where they might win a playoff game if they get a good matchup, but I don't see them making a deep playoff run at this point in time. The Denver Broncos, similar spot. I trust the defense immensely. They had, 9 sacks against the New York Jets over in London. Like, it is still maybe the best defense in football. Nick Bonito leads the NFL in sacks. He's got a quiet defensive player of the year case. Last year was Patrick Surtain. So, like, the team's got multiple defensive player of the year level people. The offense, I like the run game. The Dobbins-Harvey thing is good. Bo Nix, can you elevate throughout this season and get to a great level? Or are we just going to be kind of capped at this ceiling where in this game versus the Jets, it feels like you did everything you could to lose? Some games you're solid, like that fourth quarter versus Philly. Is that more a Philly story? It may be. It's not clicking. It's not fully clicking with Bo Nix and Sean Payton right now. I got the New England Patriots in this tier. Almost drop a game to New Orleans, but coming off of a massive win in Buffalo against Buffalo, you knew there was going to kind of be a letdown game the week after. Drake May, though, sensational what he's doing right now. And you could argue of like all the sophomore quarterbacks that we're discussing with Caleb and Jaden and Drake, etc., that he's got the worst weapons core right now, and he's producing at the highest level. So if you're a Patriots fan, you got to feel like, hey, whatever happens this year, we got the guy to build around, money to spend, and we're going to become an attractive destination again. So the Patriots might be back, NFL fans. And oh man, if we get Patriots Chiefs playoffs games for you know what? Let's not even dive into that hole. The Patriots are good. They're going to be a playoff team. The Pittsburgh Steelers, man, it took me a little bit. I'm not even completely still bought into Pittsburgh, but all they do is win. And at some point, you know, it's not the standings, but the W's got to matter, right? And I do feel like in some senses, Pittsburgh has gotten better week after week. The defense is in a much better spot now than it was a month ago at this time when we were really questioning it. The offense, they're in the market for another wide receiver. I think that they should be, because realistically, it's DK Metcalf and a bunch of tight ends that Rodgers is kind of developing trust with, and Rodgers can make a few sensational plays a game, and that's all that they really need. The run game with Johnson, Gainwell, and Warren is solid, and Pittsburgh, man, Tomlin, all this guy does is find ways to win football games. I'm moving Washington back down to playoff teams. They're 3-3 at this point. I just think that that's where Washington is. I don't think that the defense is strong enough to completely shut down an opposing team ever. And the offense right now isn't as dynamic as it was last year. And in a competitive NFC, I don't think that Washington can get to a Super Bowl the way that they're currently playing. I think Jaden Daniels is special. It's really nothing against him. It's just their team isn't to the caliber of Super Bowl contender right now. And that's how I feel. I put Seattle in this tier. I was this close to moving Seattle up. And if we see a really good showing versus Houston next week, don't be shocked if I move Seattle up to Super Bowl contenders. They're playing some really, really good football right now. And Darnold and JSN have a really solid connection. Smith and Jigba becomes the leading receiver in football. Like, this guy is taking off to an elite level. They do have some talented running backs and a defense that, when healthy, is really, really solid. Mike McDonald is a sensational coach. I believe the Seahawks, since he took over, are something like 9-1 on the road. And if you guys know me, you know that I value road wins, and I do attribute it a lot to culture and coaching. And Seattle has that. This is where things get pretty interesting. Before we hop into Super Bowl contenders, if you like this video and like this style video, I'd appreciate it if you guys hit the thumbs up button. It does just let me know that you guys are enjoying these types of videos. I have Buffalo in the Super Bowl contenders here. Buffalo, the last 2 weeks, has had some losses to teams that, going into each matchup, you probably thought were beneath Buffalo, and Buffalo should be beating these teams. And even in this tier list, Buffalo is still ahead of these teams for me. But there is something to note about Buffalo where it's like, hey, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. They've beaten the Ravens, who, yeah, they were healthy when they played them, but we kind of saw they weren't that good. And then they've beaten teams like the Jets and the Saints. And it just hasn't been high level competition that Buffalo has faced. And they're 4-2. A start to a season where Buffalo probably should have been 6-0, and maybe you would have settled for 5-1. They're 4-2 because of some real flaws. They can't defend the run whatsoever. And I know Daquan Jones was out, but Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier took the Buffalo Bills lunch money. And when Buffalo is trailing in a game, there is a lack of explosiveness to their passing game. And I know that sounds weird to say when Josh Allen is your quarterback, but as long as these teams are able to contain Allen, which New England and Atlanta have done, the weapons down the field aren't really getting open. So are they dynamic enough offensively to win a Super Bowl? I have questions on both sides when it comes to Buffalo. Absolutely. Detroit's similar, man. Detroit's built to be leading football games. And when they're trailing, they're a much different team. And if you are going to go on a Super Bowl run, odds are you'll be trailing at some point in that playoff run. I have questions a little bit about Detroit's culture after the fight there. Is anybody going to get consistent pass rush not named Aiden Hutchinson? And can Jared Goff go toe-to-toe with these big quarterbacks? Both of these teams are moving down from Super Bowl favorites because I thought this week exposed some real concerns for both of them. Speaking of concerns, the Eagles, they're 4-2, still leading their division. Miraculously, it feels like they've played some of the worst football they've ever played. They're one of the bottom-ranked offenses in terms of yards per game. The alarms have to be going off there in terms of offensive coordinator. Zadarius Smith just retired. They desperately need a cornerback too. And truthfully, if there was some really strong NFL teams right now, Philly would probably move down again. But it's just a weird spot where I think they have so much talent and not a lot of teams have their shit figured out that I think Philly could still land in this spot. Their defense, obviously, it doesn't help that Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, and Nolan Smith all basically didn't play the entirety of the Thursday Night Football game, but the offense has some real concerns. The defense, I could at least point to the injuries, and they're like one trade away there. The offense has some big issues that they need to figure out. Green Bay, I believe, is the favorites right now to come out of the NFC per Vegas standards. To me, I just don't know if I trust Green Bay to be able to go on a run of beating 3 good NFC teams in a row. It feels like they struggle with teams that they shouldn't. The Browns beat them. They tied Dallas. Cincinnati was even a little alive. It's a young team. I think it's still the youngest team in football, and part of that is you struggle putting teams away, and Green Bay is struggling to put teams away, but if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you got to put teams away. So that's something. Green Bay, though, does have some really high-end defensive talent. Jordan Love has gotten better with the turnovers this year. I know he had a bad one versus Cincinnati, but he has improved in that aspect, and the offense is two-dimensional with himself and Josh Jacobs. I got the Rams in this tier. I did honestly consider putting the Rams in Super Bowl favorites, and I know people will call me crazy for that because they haven't been playing their best ball over the last 2 weeks, and when I look at the NFC right now, the Rams have what we know to be an elite quarterback come playoff time, a real run game with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, 2 high-end receivers in Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, a decent offensive line, a strong defensive line with Byron Young, Jared Verse, and a secondary that's proven that they can hold up. The defense got better all throughout last year. It's decent. They're probably going to be in the market for a corner at the trade deadline, but the Rams, while not playing their best football today, I think you can have confidence that come playoff time, they could make some noise. And then we get to the Super Bowl favorites tier, man, and they're back. I was finally ready last week after the loss to Jacksonville to move Kansas City down and be like, hey, maybe Kansas City isn't who we thought. And then they go and just bully the Detroit Lions. Truthfully, they beat the crap out of them. And Patrick Mahomes is the current MVP favorite. He was phenomenal against Detroit, and they're getting Rashee Rice back, their best offensive weapon. The run game probably looked the best it's looked all season against Detroit, which isn't saying much. I still think that they could be in the market for a running back, but the defense was strong, and all of a sudden, we're 6 weeks into the season, and it's like, fuck, Kansas City Chiefs are back, man. I don't know what to say. The Colts, man, we got to start respecting it. Offensively, they're elite. They are the #1 scoring offense right now. They're top, I believe they're 4th in total yards per game, but they're top 7 in both passing and rushing. So not only are they a two-dimensional offense, they're an elite two-dimensional offense. They score a ton of points, so you know they're effective in the red zone. Daniel Jones is playing some fantastic football, and maybe this is a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold level of resurgence once he gets somewhere, and we're just being a little hesitant with it. But at this point in time, the coaching with Steichen, your weapons, Jonathan Taylor could be Offensive Player of the Year. Tyler Warren is really damn good. And the receiving core of Pittman and Downs and Alec Pierce, there's enough there. And Lou Anarumo has that defense playing good enough that with how good their offense is, they're going to keep on winning football games. They're 5-1. They'd be the 1 seed in the AFC right now. And we got to show them some respect. And Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 5-1, leading the NFC right now. And they haven't been healthy once all season. They haven't been full strength once all season. And I don't know if Chris Godwin's ever going to get back to full strength, but Mike Evans is going to be out there. Igbuka's going to be back out there. Bucky Irving's going to be back out there. You're going to have your best offensive line. And when you have that, with the level that Baker Mayfield is playing at right now, and some of the real concerns for other teams in the NFC, Baker could end up in a fucking Super Bowl this season. So as always, guys, these are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. It's a fluid tier list at this point in time. A lot of the movement, a lot of changes. The NFL is in a really weird spot with parity. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What would you change? What do you like? And yeah, the NFL, man, it's a crazy, crazy world out there. Make sure if you love it, though, you hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you next time. Peace.